The fine arrived on a Tuesday morning, nestled between a credit card offer and a grocery store circular, like a viper hiding in tall grass. I stood in my driveway in Lakewood, Colorado, staring at the letter with genuine disbelief. The HOA was fining me $250 because my snow berm exceeded the maximum allowable height of 18 inches. I looked at the mound of snow my plow had pushed to the edge of my property, then back at the letter, then at the snow again. This had to be a joke. My name is Derek Jamison, and I had lived in the Pinewood Heights subdivision for 3 years without major incident. Sure, there were the usual HOA annoyances about lawn height and approved exterior paint colors, but nothing like this. It was February, and we had just gotten slammed with 30 inches of snow over the past week. Everyone's property had massive snow piles. That was just how winter worked in Colorado. I pulled out my phone and called the HOA management office. A chirpy voice answered after 2 rings. Pinewood Heights HOA, this is Brenda speaking. Hi, Brenda. This is Derek Jamison from 847 Aspen Court. I just received a fine for my snow berm height and I think there must be some mistake. Let me pull up your file. I heard keyboard clicking. Oh yes, Mr. Jamison. You received a citation for violation of Section 12.4 of the HOA bylaws, which states that snow berms may not exceed 18 inches in height measured from ground level. Brenda, we just got 30 inches of snow. Where exactly am I supposed to put it? The bylaw is clear, sir. You may spread it evenly across your property or have it hauled away, but berms exceeding 18 inches constitute a visual nuisance and potential liability. A liability? It's snow. It will melt. The fine stands, Mr. Jamison. You have 30 days to pay or file a formal appeal with the board. She paused. Though I should mention that appeals cost a $100 filing fee, non-refundable even if you win. I hung up and stood there fuming. The snow berm in question was maybe 2.5 feet tall, pushed up naturally by the snowplow guy I hired to clear my driveway. Every single house on my street had similar berms. Some were even taller. My neighbor Tom walked by with his golden retriever, and I waved him over. Did you get one of these? I held up the letter. Tom squinted at it, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. A fine? No, what for? Snow berm height, he laughed. You are joking, I wish. Tom looked at my snow pile, then at his own across the street. His was noticeably taller. Mine's bigger than yours. Why didn't I get fined? That was an excellent question. I went back inside, fired up my laptop, and pulled up the HOA bylaws from the community website. Sure enough, buried in Section 12.4 was the snow berm regulation. But as I read further, I found something interesting. The rule required the HOA to measure all berms uniformly and apply penalties consistently. Cherry-picking violations was explicitly prohibited under the enforcement guidelines in Section 23. I decided to do some reconnaissance. I spent the next 2 hours walking through the neighborhood with a measuring tape, documenting snow berm heights. Out of the 42 homes I measured, 37 had berms exceeding 18 inches. Some topped 4 feet. Yet I was apparently the only one who had received a fine. When I got back home, my fingers were numb, but I had solid data. I also had a theory. The HOA president, Denise Patterson, lived 3 houses down from me. We had a history. 6 months ago, I had filed a complaint about her constantly parking her Escalade across 2 visitor spots. She had retaliated by reporting me for having my trash cans visible from the street on a non-collection day. Never mind that it had been because a raccoon knocked them over at midnight. Since then, we had maintained a cold war of mutual avoidance. I knocked on Denise's door that evening. She answered wearing yoga pants and an annoyed expression, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. "Derek, what do you want?" I received a fine for my snow berm height. "I measured 42 properties today. Mine is far from the tallest, but I seem to be the only one cited." "Can you explain why?" The HOA board reviews violations as they are reported. If your property was reported and found in violation, you receive a fine. That's how it works. "Who reported it?" "That information is confidential." "Was it you?" Her eyes narrowed. "I don't appreciate your tone." "The fine is legitimate. Pay it or file an appeal." "So if I were to report other violations, those would be investigated too?" "If they are legitimate violations, yes. But filing frivolous complaints is itself a violation." I smiled. "Good to know. Thanks for your time, Denise." I walked away, already formulating a plan. If the HOA wanted to play measurement games, I could play too. But I needed irrefutable evidence, documented in a way that could not be disputed. That is when I remembered my cousin's drone. Marcus lived in Denver and did real estate photography with a high-end camera drone. I called him that night. "I need to borrow your drone," I said. "Why? HOA drama," he laughed. "Say no more. I can do you one better. I will come fly it myself and show you how to get proper measurements from aerial footage." This sounds entertaining. We planned for Saturday morning. The weather forecast showed clear skies and minimal wind, perfect flying conditions. In the meantime, I filed my formal appeal, paid the $100 fee, and requested a hearing before the board. The next available date was 3 weeks away. Marcus arrived at 8 in the morning with his drone case, looking like he was about to film an action movie. The drone was a DJI Mavic 3, equipped with a high-resolution camera capable of detailed topographic imaging. "You know this is probably overkill," Marcus said as he unpacked the equipment. "If I am going to do this, I am going to do it right." He grinned. "I like your style." We started at one end of Pinewood Heights and worked our way systematically through the neighborhood. Marcus flew the drone in a grid pattern, capturing overhead footage and angled shots that clearly showed each property's snow berms. The drone's GPS tagged each image with precise coordinates. "This thing can measure height differential using photogrammetry," Marcus explained as he showed me the tablet display. "See these overlapping images? The software can create a 3D model and calculate exact heights. That is amazing. Technology, man." Real estate agents use it to measure roof dimensions without climbing up there. We spent 3 hours documenting every property in the subdivision, including the common areas. When we finished, Marcus had hundreds of images and several gigabytes of data. "Give me a few days to process this," he said. "I will create a complete report with measurements for every berm in the neighborhood." "Can you highlight the board members' properties?" "Absolutely." After Marcus left, I felt energized for the first time since receiving the fine. But my satisfaction was short-lived. On Sunday morning, I found a new letter in my mailbox. This time it was a cease and desist order claiming I had violated the privacy policy by using a drone to photograph HOA properties without permission. I called Marcus immediately. "Did you get any kind of complaint or letter?" "Nope." "Why?" I read him the cease and desist. "That is ridiculous," he said. "Aerial photography of properties from public airspace is completely legal. We were not hovering over people's backyards filming through windows. We flew standard mapping patterns over a residential area. The FAA allows it, and there is no reasonable expectation of privacy for the exterior of properties visible from above. Can they fine me for it? They can try, but it would not hold up if challenged. HOA rules cannot override federal law. Besides, Technically, I flew the drone, not you. I spent Sunday evening researching drone laws and HOA authority. Marcus was right. The HOA could not prohibit aerial photography conducted in accordance with FAA regulations. Their privacy policy only covered photography conducted from ground level or from someone else's property. Airspace was not HOA territory. On Monday, I responded to the cease and desist with a detailed letter citing federal regulations and case law. I also noted that if the HOA wanted to prohibit drone photography, they would need to amend their bylaws through the proper voting procedure, which required notice to all homeowners and a majority vote. I concluded by stating that I had not personally operated any drone, but that I could not control what third parties did in public airspace. Tuesday brought Marcus's report. It was beautiful. He had created a color-coded map of the entire subdivision showing every property's maximum snow berm height. Properties in compliance with the 18-inch rule appeared green. Yellow indicated berms between 18 and 24 inches. Orange meant 24 to 36 inches. Red showed anything over 3 feet. The map was a sea of yellow, orange, and red. Only 4 properties showed green, and 2 of those were vacant lots. My property showed orange at 29 inches. Denise Patterson's property showed red at 41 inches. Even better, Marcus had included detailed measurement data, methodology notes, and comparison photographs. The report looked professional enough to present in court. I emailed a copy to myself, saved backups in 3 locations, and printed a physical copy. Then I waited for my hearing date. The wait gave the HOA board plenty of time to dig themselves deeper. I received 2 more letters. The first demanded payment of the original fine plus a $50 late fee. The second added a $100 fine for the drone incident, citing the privacy policy I had already refuted. I documented everything meticulously. Screenshots of emails, certified mail receipts, dated photographs of the letters. I also filed a formal complaint against Denise Patterson for her excessive snow berm, carefully following all the procedures outlined in the bylaws. A week before my hearing, Tom stopped by my house looking concerned. "I heard you are going to war with the HOA," he said. "Word travels fast. Denise came by yesterday asking if I had seen you operating a drone. I told her I had not, which is true, but she seemed pretty worked up about it. She's trying to intimidate me into backing down. Look, Derek, I get it. The fine is stupid, but is it worth all this hassle over $250? It is not about the money. It's about selective enforcement and abuse of power. If they can arbitrarily fine me while ignoring everyone else, what stops them from doing worse?" Tom nodded slowly. "Fair point. For what it is worth, a bunch of us are talking about going to your hearing to support you. This whole thing has people annoyed." That was encouraging news. HOA boards tended to operate with impunity because most homeowners could not be bothered to attend meetings or challenge decisions. But when people actually showed up, the dynamics changed. The hearing was scheduled for 7 p.m. on a Thursday in the community center clubhouse. I arrived at 6:45 with my printed report, a tablet with the digital version, and a flash drive backup. The room was set up with a table at the front for the 5 board members and rows of chairs for attendees. To my surprise, the chairs were filling up. I counted at least 30 neighbors, including Tom. Denise sat at the board table looking displeased. The other board members were Gary Morrison, an older man who had retired from banking, Linda Chen, who worked in tech, Robert Stafford, a physician, and Karen Wheeler, a middle-aged woman with short-cut hair who ran some kind of consulting business. Karen called the meeting to order at 7 sharp. She went through standard procedural items, approved the previous meeting's minutes, and discussed upcoming neighborhood events. Then she got to my appeal. Next, we have the matter of Derek Jamison's appeal regarding a fine for snow berm height violation. Mr. Jamison, you have 10 minutes to present your case. I stood and approached the table, connecting my tablet to the television screen mounted on the wall. Thank you for hearing my appeal. On February 7th, I received a fine for having a snow berm that exceeded 18 inches. According to the citation, my berm measured approximately 29 inches at its highest point. I do not dispute that measurement. I pulled up the first image on the screen, showing my property from above with the measurement overlay. However, I do dispute the selective enforcement of this rule. Section 23 of our bylaws states that violations must be enforced uniformly. I spent considerable time documenting snow berm heights throughout our community. I advanced to the neighborhood map. A murmur went through the audience. This is an aerial survey of every property in Pinewood Heights, conducted on February 11th. As you can see, 37 out of 42 occupied properties have snow berms exceeding the 18-inch limit, yet I am the only homeowner who has been cited. Karen leaned forward. How did you obtain these measurements? Aerial photogrammetry using drone-based photography, the same technology surveyors and real estate professionals use. The methodology is detailed in the report. Denise spoke up. You violated the privacy policy by conducting unauthorized surveillance. Aerial photography from public airspace is legal under federal law. The FAA explicitly allows it for residential property documentation. HOA rules cannot override federal regulations. I brought up a new slide showing relevant case law and FAA regulations. I had spent hours preparing for exactly this objection. Furthermore, I did not personally operate the drone. A licensed professional photographer conducted a legal aerial survey. Any privacy policy violation would need to be pursued against him, not me, and would not succeed because no violation occurred. Gary Morrison cleared his throat. Even if we accept your measurement methodology, what exactly are you asking for? I am asking that my fine be rescinded due to selective enforcement. If the board intends to enforce the snow berm rule, it must be enforced uniformly against all violators. You cannot fine me while ignoring 37 other violations. I advanced to a new slide showing side-by-side images of my property and Denise's property, with measurement overlays clearly visible. For example, the HOA president's own property has a snow berm measuring 41 inches, significantly taller than mine. Yet she has not been fined. Denise's face flushed. That is because no one filed a complaint about my property. Actually, someone did. I held up a paper. I filed a formal complaint 8 days ago, following all proper procedures. According to the bylaws, complaints must be investigated within 5 business days. Has my complaint been investigated? Karen looked uncomfortable. We will need to review the complaint file. I have the certified mail receipt showing it was delivered to the management office 9 days ago. Robert Stafford spoke for the first time. This seems like a situation that has gotten out of hand. Why don't we just rescind all snow berm fines for this winter and revise the policy for next year? Because the issue is not just the snow berms, I said. The issue is a pattern of selective enforcement. I have documented other instances as well. I brought up a new section of my presentation showing photographs of various violations throughout the neighborhood. Visible trash cans on non-collection days, lawn heights exceeding the limit, unauthorized exterior color choices, vehicle parking violations. In each case, I had the date I photographed it, the relevant bylaw, and whether a citation had been issued. In the past 6 months, 47 violations have been selectively enforced. 23 homeowners committed violations that went uncited, while 12 homeowners received citations for similar or less severe violations. I pulled up a spreadsheet. When I analyzed the data, a pattern emerged. Homeowners who had previously challenged board decisions or filed complaints about board members were cited at a rate 5 times higher than compliant homeowners. The room was silent. I could feel the tension. This is not about snow berms. This is about a board that uses enforcement power to retaliate against perceived troublemakers. That is illegal. Colorado law specifically prohibits HOAs from selective enforcement and retaliation. Karen's expression had gone from uncomfortable to alarmed. Those are serious accusations. Do you have proof of intentional retaliation? I pulled up an email chain I had obtained through a public records request. HOA boards in Colorado were required to maintain certain records available to homeowners. This is an email exchange between board members from January. In it, Denise Patterson suggests that I be watched carefully for violations and cited whenever possible. The email specifically references the trash can incident last fall and states he needs to learn that fighting the board has consequences. Denise stood abruptly. That email was taken out of context. Really? What context makes it acceptable to target specific homeowners for enforcement? Gary Morrison held up his hand. I think we need to take a recess and discuss this in executive session. Actually, you do not, I said. Executive sessions are only permitted for specific legal matters outlined in Colorado statute. Discussing the facts of an enforcement appeal is not one of them. This discussion must happen in open session. I had done my homework. The Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act was very specific about when executive sessions were allowed. Karen looked at the other board members. Mr. Jamison is correct. We need to address this now. Linda Chen, who had been quiet throughout, spoke up. I was not aware of this email. When was it sent? January 23rd, I said. I was not copied on it. Neither was I, said Robert. Denise shifted uncomfortably. It was a private communication with Karen about management issues. Private communications between board members about HOA business violate the open meeting laws, I said. All board business must be conducted in properly noticed meetings. This was getting better than I had hoped. The board was fracturing in real time. Tom stood up from the audience. I want to say something. I have lived here for 8 years. I served on the board 3 years ago. This selective enforcement stuff is real. I have seen it happen. And it is not just Derek. The Hendersons got cited for fence color when at least 6 other people have the same color. The Martins got fined for holiday decorations while others had the same decorations up longer. If we do not fix this, someone is going to file a lawsuit, and we will all end up paying for it through increased HOA fees. Several other neighbors voiced agreement. The mood in the room had shifted decisively against the board. Karen Wheeler looked overwhelmed. She was clearly not prepared for this level of opposition. Gary Morrison, on the other hand, looked thoughtful. He had probably dealt with enough regulatory issues in his banking career to recognize a losing position. I move that we rescind Mr. Jamison's fine, Gary said. Furthermore, I move that we suspend all snow berm enforcement for the remainder of this winter and form a committee to review our enforcement procedures for fairness and consistency. Second, said Linda immediately. Discussion, Karen asked weakly. Denise looked like she wanted to argue, but the room's atmosphere was hostile. She stayed silent. All in favor? Gary, Linda, and Robert raised their hands. Karen hesitated, then raised hers as well. Denise sat with her arms crossed. Motion carries 4-1. Mr. Jamison, your fine is rescinded. Is there anything else? Yes, I said. I incurred costs in preparing my defense. I paid a $100 appeal filing fee and approximately $300 in research and documentation costs. I request reimbursement. Gary nodded. That seems reasonable given that the fine was unjustified. I move we reimburse Mr. Jamison $400. Second, said Linda again. The vote was the same, 4-1. I had not really expected to win that point, but I figured I might as well try. As the meeting moved on to other business, I sat down, feeling the adrenaline drain away. Tom gave me a thumbs up. Several other neighbors smiled or nodded approvingly, but Denise kept staring at me with barely concealed fury. I knew this was not over. After the meeting, a dozen people came up to thank me or share their own stories of selective enforcement. Apparently, my situation was the tip of the iceberg. People were genuinely angry once they realized the pattern. Gary Morrison approached as the crowd thinned. That was quite a presentation. Can I see your full report? I handed him the flash drive. It is all there. He pocketed it. I am going to recommend we hire an independent management company to review our enforcement procedures. This should never have gotten this far. I appreciate that. He lowered his voice. Between you and me, Denise has been a problem. But she does a lot of work for the HOA and nobody else wanted to be president. It is hard to remove someone when no one wants the job. Maybe that is the real problem. If people do not want to lead, they should not be in charge. He smiled slightly. Fair point. Anyway, you did good work here. That data analysis was impressive. I drove home feeling vindicated but exhausted. Fighting the HOA had taken dozens of hours and significant stress. Was it worth it over a $250 fine? Financially, no, but principles mattered. My wife, Sarah, would be proud. She was away on a 3-week business trip in Singapore and had missed the whole drama. We had talked on the phone throughout, and she had encouraged me to fight it. Sarah was a lawyer herself, though she practiced intellectual property law, not HOA disputes. Still, she had helped me understand the legal framework. I texted her a summary. Won the appeal. Fine rescinded. Board is a mess. Call you tomorrow. Her response came a few minutes later despite the time difference. Proud of you. Do not let them retaliate. That was good advice. Retaliation was a real risk. I needed to stay vigilant. The next few days were quiet. I received a formal letter from the HOA confirming the fine reversal and a check for $400. The check was signed by Karen Wheeler with what looked like an annoyed flourish. Then on Tuesday I got a call from Marcus. Dude, you are not going to believe this. I just got a cease and desist letter from your HOA threatening legal action for conducting unauthorized surveillance. What? They cannot go after you. You do not even live here. That is what I said. My lawyer laughed when he read it. He says it is an empty threat, but he is drafting a response explaining why they have no legal basis for action. I am sorry you got dragged into this. Are you kidding? This is the most interesting thing that has happened to me all month. Besides, my lawyer says if they actually try to sue, we can counterclaim for harassment and legal fees. They will back down. He was probably right, but it showed Denise's vindictiveness. She was lashing out at anyone involved in challenging her authority. That weekend, I attended the regular monthly HOA meeting. The community center was packed, much more crowded than the typical attendance of 5 or 6 people. Word had spread about the enforcement issues. Karen opened the meeting and immediately addressed the elephant in the room. As many of you know, concerns were raised about selective enforcement of HOA rules. The board has voted to hire Evergreen Management Solutions to conduct an independent audit of our enforcement procedures over the past 2 years. They will review all citations, complaints, and enforcement actions to determine if there are patterns of selective or discriminatory enforcement. That was a positive development. Gary had apparently followed through. Furthermore, Karen continued, we are forming an enforcement review committee composed of 3 homeowners who are not board members. This committee will review all future citations before they are issued to ensure consistency. We are accepting volunteers. Several hands went up, including Tom's. I considered volunteering but decided against it. I had done my part. Let others step up. The meeting proceeded to financial reports and landscaping contracts. Then Denise dropped a bomb. I am resigning as HOA president effective immediately. The room went silent. Personal reasons, she continued curtly. Karen will assume the role of acting president until the next election. She stood, gathered her papers, and walked out without another word. I could not tell if this was a strategic retreat or a genuine surrender, but either way it was significant. After the meeting, Linda Chen approached me. I wanted to apologize. I should have been paying more attention to enforcement patterns. I trusted that procedures were being followed, but clearly I was wrong. It is not your fault. These things happen when one person has too much control. Still, as a board member, I am responsible. I am going to make sure the audit is thorough. Over the next few weeks, life returned to normal. The snow began melting as March arrived with warmer temperatures. My massive snow berm shrank gradually, as did everyone else's. The whole controversy became moot. The independent audit report arrived in mid-April. It was damning. Evergreen Management Solutions had identified 43 instances of selective enforcement over a 2-year period, with a clear pattern of targeting homeowners who had previously challenged board decisions. They also found evidence of improper executive sessions, inadequate record keeping, and failure to follow proper notice procedures for meetings and hearings. The report made 12 specific recommendations for policy changes and suggested that 3 board members receive training on Colorado HOA law. Denise Patterson was specifically cited for creating a hostile environment and exceeding her authority as president. At the next board meeting, Karen announced that Denise had officially resigned from the board entirely, not just from the presidency. There was scattered applause. Gary Morrison was elected as the new president. His first act was to implement all 12 recommendations from the audit report. His second was to establish a homeowner bill of rights, outlining the process for challenging citations and protecting residents from retaliation. I felt satisfied with the outcome. The system had worked, though it required effort. Most HOA abuse goes unchallenged because people do not want the hassle. I understood that impulse, but someone had to stand up. In May, I ran into Tom at the local hardware store. We were both buying mulch for spring landscaping. "Did you hear the news?" he asked. "What news?" The Evergreen audit report got leaked to the local news. Channel 7 did a whole segment on HOA abuse, using our neighborhood as an example. I had not heard. I pulled out my phone and found the news segment online. Sure enough, there was a 5-minute piece about selective enforcement in HOAs, featuring interviews with homeowners in Pinewood Heights and excerpts from the audit report. My name was mentioned as the homeowner who challenged the system. "Are you famous now?" Tom joked. "God, I hope not. The last thing I want is more attention." But the attention had consequences. Within 2 weeks, 3 other homeowners in different Lakewood subdivisions contacted me asking for advice on challenging their own HOA disputes. I shared my documentation methods and legal research, hoping they could achieve similar results. One of them, a woman named Patricia from a neighborhood called Meadowview Estates, was dealing with a particularly aggressive board that had fined her thousands of dollars for various alleged violations. Her situation was worse than mine had been. The board was threatening foreclosure. "They are trying to force me out," she said when we met for coffee. "I complained about the treasurer embezzling funds, and now suddenly I am getting fined for everything. Do you have proof of embezzlement?" "I have bank statements showing irregular transfers, but the board refuses to investigate." "That is a criminal matter. You need to report it to the police, not try to handle it through the HOA." She looked surprised. "I can do that, absolutely. Embezzlement is theft. If you have evidence, file a police report." I helped her organize her documentation and directed her to the local authorities. I also connected her with Sarah's law firm, which had a partner who specialized in HOA disputes. 2 months later, Patricia called to thank me. The police had investigated and found that the treasurer had indeed embezzled over $60,000 from the HOA over 3 years. The treasurer was arrested and charged with multiple felonies. The entire board was recalled, and Patricia's fines were rescinded. "You changed my life," she said. I was about to lose my home. It felt good to help, but it also made me angry. How many people were dealing with similar situations but did not know how to fight back? HOAs wielded enormous power with minimal oversight. The system was ripe for abuse. Sarah came home from Singapore in June, and I filled her in on everything that had happened in person. She was proud of my work but also concerned. "You have made yourself a target," she said. "Not just in this neighborhood but among HOA boards generally. That news segment painted you as a troublemaker." I challenged abuse. "That is not troublemaking." "I agree with you, but they do not see it that way. Just be careful." Her warning proved prescient. In July, I received a notice that my homeowner insurance premium was increasing significantly. When I called to ask why, the insurance agent was evasive. "It is just a rate adjustment based on risk factors." "What risk factors? I have not filed any claims." "I cannot discuss the specific algorithm, but certain property characteristics can affect rates." I suspected this was connected to the HOA situation somehow, but I could not prove it. I shopped around and found a different insurer at a reasonable rate. Then in August, I received a letter from the HOA stating that my property was being randomly selected for a compliance inspection to ensure all structures met building codes and HOA architectural standards. Tom got the same letter. So did 2 other neighbors who had supported me at the hearing. "This is retaliation," Tom said when we compared letters. "Denise might be gone, but someone on that board still has it out for us." I called Gary Morrison, who was now the board president. "Gary, I just got a compliance inspection notice." So did 3 other people who were vocal at the enforcement hearing. "This looks like retaliation." He sighed heavily. "I voted against those inspections, Derek. Karen pushed for them, claiming we needed to do random compliance checks." "I suspect you are right about the motivation, but I was outvoted." "Who else voted for it?" "Karen and a new board member, Susan Pritchard. Linda and Robert voted with me against it." "Can you stop it?" "Not without a majority vote. But I can make sure the inspections are actually random going forward and not targeted. Give me some time to work on this." The inspection happened the following week. A building inspector came out and examined my property for 2 hours, checking everything from foundation to roof. He found nothing wrong. "Your property is in excellent condition," he said. "I do not know why they requested this inspection. Everything is up to code." I received a formal letter stating that my property passed inspection, along with a bill for $350 for the inspection cost. That was the last straw. I called Sarah's law firm and set up a consultation with their HOA attorney, a sharp woman named Michelle Rodriguez. "You have a clear case for harassment," Michelle said after reviewing my documentation. "The pattern is obvious. First the selective fine, then the continued targeting after you won your appeal. What are my options?" "We can send a cease and desist letter threatening legal action if the harassment continues. That will probably work. HOA boards typically back down when actual lawyers get involved because they know the HOA's insurance will not cover intentional harassment. And if they do not back down, then we sue for harassment, violation of the Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Given your documentation, we would likely win and recover attorney fees." "How much would that cost?" "The cease and desist letter is $500. If we have to file a lawsuit, it could run $5,000 to $10,000, but we would seek to recover that from the HOA. I authorized the cease and desist letter. Michelle drafted a detailed letter outlining the pattern of harassment, citing specific Colorado statutes, and threatening legal action if any further targeted enforcement occurred. She sent it certified mail to the HOA board and their management company. The effect was immediate. Gary called me 2 days after the letter arrived. "We got your lawyer's letter. I want you to know that I am pushing for a board meeting to address this. Karen is panicking. She did not realize her actions could be seen as illegal harassment." "They were illegal harassment, Gary. I know. Look, I am doing my best to clean things up, but I am fighting against people who have been running things their way for years. Give me a chance to fix this. I appreciate what you are trying to do, but I am not going to be anyone's punching bag while you work on internal politics." "Fair enough. Can you give me 2 weeks? If things are not resolved by then, do what you need to do." I agreed to wait. 2 weeks later, there was a special board meeting. Karen Wheeler resigned, citing personal reasons. Susan Pritchard also resigned. The board appointed 2 new members to fill the vacancies, both of whom seemed reasonable. At the meeting, Gary formally apologized to me on behalf of the board. "The board acknowledges that certain enforcement actions and inspections were not conducted fairly or consistently. We apologize to Mr. Jamison and any other homeowners who were unfairly targeted. Going forward, all enforcement will follow the procedures recommended by Evergreen Management Solutions, and any homeowner who feels they have been unfairly targeted can appeal to the Enforcement Review Committee." He also announced that all inspection fees charged to me and the other targeted homeowners would be refunded. It was as close to a complete victory as I was likely to get. Michelle Rodriguez advised me that the cease and desist letter had accomplished its purpose, and further legal action was unnecessary unless new problems arose. Life in Pinewood Heights gradually stabilized. The new board functioned smoothly, with clear procedures and consistent enforcement. The Enforcement Review Committee provided oversight that kept things fair. Homeowners felt more confident that rules would be applied evenly. I stayed involved, attending board meetings regularly to keep an eye on things. So did Tom and several others. The increased scrutiny kept the board honest. In November, winter returned to Colorado. The first major snowstorm dumped 20 inches on Lakewood. Plows pushed snow into berms along every driveway. Mine was probably about 30 inches tall. I waited to see if anyone would say anything. Nobody did. The snow berm rule had been effectively abandoned, though it remained technically in the bylaws. The board had more important things to worry about than snow height. Standing in my driveway one morning, Watching the sunrise paint the snow-covered mountains pink and gold, I reflected on the past year. Fighting the HOA had been exhausting, frustrating, and time-consuming, but it had also been necessary. Too many people lived under HOA tyranny, accepting abuse because they did not know how to fight back or did not want the hassle. I had been in a position to push back, with the resources and knowledge to challenge the system. Not everyone was that fortunate. The experience had taught me important lessons about power and accountability. Organizations given authority without oversight inevitably abused that authority. Only constant vigilance from the people subject to that power kept it in check. It also taught me that individuals could make a difference. My drone survey and data analysis had exposed a pattern of abuse that might have continued indefinitely. One person, armed with evidence and determination, had forced systemic change. Sarah came out to join me in the driveway, wrapping her arms around me from behind. "Admiring your snow berm," she teased. "Just thinking about how much has changed. You did a good thing. People notice." Patricia called me yesterday to say the new board at Meadowview is completely different. They are actually serving the community instead of ruling over it. That treasurer who was embezzling, did she ever go to trial? Pleaded guilty. Got 3 years in prison and has to pay full restitution. The HOA is recovering most of the money. Good. We stood together in the cold morning, watching neighbors emerge to shovel driveways and scrape windshields. A normal winter day in suburban Colorado. But things were better now, fairer. The system had been broken and then repaired. Not perfectly, but better. Tom drove by in his pickup truck, waving as he headed to work. A new family was moving into Denise Patterson's old house, their moving truck just pulling up. Life continued. My phone buzzed with an email. It was from a homeowner in Aurora asking if I could speak at their community meeting about HOA enforcement issues. Apparently, my reputation had spread. I showed Sarah the email. "What do you think?" "I think you have become the HOA resistance leader of Colorado," she laughed. "Next you will be running for the state legislature." "God, no, I just want to live in peace in my own house." Then politely decline, "You have done enough." She was right. I had fought my battle and won. Other people would have to fight theirs. I could offer advice and support, but I could not be everyone's champion. I drafted a polite response declining the speaking invitation, but offering to share my documentation methods and legal research. That felt like a fair compromise. As winter deepened and snow continued to fall, my snow berm grew to impressive heights. At one point it probably exceeded 4 feet. Nobody said a word. The 18-inch rule existed only on paper now, a relic of a different era when petty tyrants ran the neighborhood. The holidays came and went. Sarah and I hosted Christmas dinner for both our families, filling the house with warmth and laughter. My parents asked about the HOA situation, having heard bits and pieces from our phone calls throughout the year. "Are things settled now?" my mother asked. "I think so. The bad actors are gone and the new leadership seems committed to doing things right." My father raised his glass. "To standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult." We toasted, and the conversation moved on to other topics, but his words stuck with me. Standing up for what was right, even when it was difficult. That was the essence of citizenship, of community responsibility. If everyone did that, systems could not become corrupt. As the year ended and a new year began, I felt cautiously optimistic about Pinewood Heights. The neighborhood had been through turmoil but emerged stronger. Homeowners were more engaged. The board was more accountable. The system worked better. In February, 1 year after the original snow berm fine, I received an envelope from the HOA. My heart sank. wondering what fresh nonsense this might be. But when I opened it, I found a letter from Gary Morrison thanking me for my service to the community. The board had voted to recognize me as Homeowner of the Year for my efforts to improve HOA governance. I did not know whether to laugh or cry. From villain to hero in 12 months, all because I had refused to accept an unjust fine. The award came with a plaque and a gift certificate to a local restaurant. More importantly, it came with vindication. The community recognized that my fight had been worthwhile, that I had acted in everyone's interest, not just my own. I hung the plaque in my home office, next to my framed copies of the drone survey maps. Visual reminders of a strange year, a fought battle, a won war. Spring arrived, melting the snow and revealing brown grass and mud beneath. The berms that had caused so much trouble disappeared without ceremony, leaving no trace except in memory and HOA meeting minutes. Life moved forward. Sarah got promoted at her firm. I finished a major project at work and got a significant bonus. We talked about starting a family, about the future, about dreams deferred and now possible. The HOA faded into background noise as it should be. Bills paid, meetings attended occasionally, rules followed reasonably. A functioning system, not perfect but fair enough. I still saw Gary Morrison at neighborhood events. We had become friendly, united by our shared experience of trying to reform a broken system from within and without. "How are things going?" I asked him at a summer barbecue. "Smooth." Almost boring, honestly, which is exactly how it should be. Boring is good. The Enforcement Review Committee is working well. We have had a few complaints, but they were handled fairly and resolved quickly. No drama. That is how it is supposed to work. He nodded. "I owe you an apology, by the way." "For what?" I knew Denise was playing favorites with enforcement, but I did not push back hard enough. I told myself it was not worth the conflict. But that kind of thinking is how abuse becomes normalized. You made it right eventually. That is what matters. We talked about other things, neighborhood gossip and sports and weather. Normal conversation between neighbors who respected each other. As I walked home that evening, past houses with varied lawn heights and slightly different paint colors and trash cans visible here and there, I felt content. The neighborhood looked lived in, human, real. Not a sterile paradise of enforced conformity, but a community where people lived their lives with reasonable consideration for each other. That was all an HOA should be. A mechanism for maintaining common spaces and resolving genuine disputes, not a tyranny of busybodies imposing arbitrary rules to feed their need for control. My fight with the HOA had been about snow berms on the surface, but underneath, it had been about something more fundamental. About the right to be treated fairly, about holding power accountable, about refusing to accept injustice, even small injustice, because small injustices unchallenged grow into large ones. It had been worth the struggle. Not just for me, but for everyone in the neighborhood who now lived under fairer rules. And for Patricia in Meadowview Estates, whose home had been saved and whose whistleblowing had sent a criminal to prison. And for whoever else might be encouraged by the example to stand up when they faced similar circumstances. Change was possible. Systems could be reformed. Individuals mattered. These were not revolutionary insights, but they were easy to forget in the daily grind of life. The HOA battle had reminded me of truths I already knew, but sometimes neglected. That citizenship required vigilance, that rights required defense, that justice required effort. As I reached my house, I looked up at the mountains towering over the western horizon, their peaks still snow-capped even in summer. Permanent and unchanging, they provided perspective. My HOA drama, which had consumed so much of my attention for so many months, was a tiny blip in the grand scheme of things. But it was my blip, my stand, my contribution to making the world slightly more just, and that was enough.